What happens when Britain's most controversial royal goes head-to-head with television's most unfiltered host? You won't believe what unfolds when Prince Harry sits down with Sharon Osbourne. A conversation that began as a polite exchange but spiraled into one of the most explosive moments in daytime TV history. From the instant Harry stepped onto the view set, the tension was unmistakable. But no one, not even the producers, could have predicted the storm that was about to erupt. Before diving into the chaos, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because this showdown between two powerhouse personalities is unlike anything you've seen before. Last night's episode was meant to be a calm discussion about Prince Harry's new charitable initiatives and upcoming projects. Producers were told it would focus on his work with veterans and mental health advocacy. What they got instead was a live masterclass in how quickly an interview can go completely off the rails, especially when Sharon Osbourne decides she's done tolerating what she calls royal hypocrisy. Backstage, the atmosphere was already tense. Sources say Harry's team had delivered a lengthy list of off-limits topics. No talk of King Charles, Queen Camilla, Prince William, the Netflix series, or Spare. Sharon, of course, had other plans. As Harry settled into his chair, straightening his tie with nervous precision, Sharon's eyes locked onto him. Her co-hosts exchanged wary glances. Everyone could feel the electricity in the air. The show started innocently enough. Harry spoke about his foundation's work with wounded veterans, his tone measured and diplomatic, the polished calm of someone who had been trained for media combat. But Sharon was watching, waiting, ready to strike. "It's wonderful to hear about your charity work, Harry," she began sweetly, leaning forward in her seat. "Truly admirable. But I have to ask, and I think our viewers deserve to know, how do you reconcile this image of caring for veterans with what many see as your abandonment of your own military family back home?" The question landed like a grenade. Harry's composure faltered for a split second, a flicker of irritation before he steadied himself again. The other hosts shifted uneasily. They all knew Sharon had just crossed a line Harry's team had drawn in bold red ink. "I think that's quite an unfair characterization, Sharon," Harry replied, his accent sharpening under the pressure. "My commitment to veterans has never wavered, regardless of geography or family circumstances." Sharon's laugh was sharp, almost mocking. "Geography? Family circumstances? That's quite the euphemism for turning your back on everything you once represented, isn't it?" She flipped through her notes with theatrical flair. "Let me remind you about some of those family circumstances you seem so eager to forget." The tension in the studio thickened to the point of suffocation. Cameras zoomed in on Harry's face, capturing every twitch, every flicker of restraint. His jaw tightened. His fingers clenched around the armrests, knuckles white. "You served your country with honor for 10 years. Sharon pressed on, her voice rising like a train gathering speed. "You fought beside brave men and women who bled for the crown you now criticize. They respected you, followed you, and now here you are, sitting in a Hollywood studio, cashing checks from Netflix, while tearing down the very institution they sacrificed for." Harry's media training was being tested like never before. Every instinct screamed at him to fight back, to defend himself, to call her out. But he knew one outburst would hand her exactly what she wanted. A viral meltdown. "My service record speaks for itself," he said finally, voice steady but edged with barely contained anger. "I have never forgotten. My brothers and sisters in arms. I will never forget them," Harry said, his voice trembling with restrained emotion. "What I've done is speak truth to power, something that, apparently, makes people very uncomfortable." Sharon seized the opening like a predator spotting weakness. "Truth to power?" she echoed, her tone laced with venomous sarcasm. "Is that what we're calling it now?" She turned dramatically toward the audience, inviting them into her performance. "Let me tell you what truth looks like, Harry. The truth is, you had everything, every privilege, every advantage handed to you on a silver platter, and you threw it all away because you couldn't handle a little criticism from the British press. The words hit like a gunshot. The studio fell still, the air thick with tension. For the first time, cracks began to show in Harry's carefully constructed composure. His breathing quickened. A muscle in his cheek twitched. "You have no idea what you're talking about," he said sharply, his voice losing the calm, polished edge it had held until now. "You have no understanding of what my family endured, what my wife endured, or the impossible position we were put in by an institution that values its image more than the people who serve it." Sharon's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. She had drawn blood, and she knew it. Harry was no longer following the script. He was speaking from pure emotion, and that was exactly where she wanted him. "Your wife?" Sharon repeated, raising an eyebrow in mock astonishment. "Oh, you mean the woman who married into the most privileged family on earth, then spent years complaining about how difficult her life was? The same woman who accused the royals of racism, but somehow never managed to name a single person or provide a single verifiable detail?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the camera crew seemed frozen, aware they were capturing something explosive, something that would be replayed for weeks to come. Harry's face hardened, his eyes darkened with fury. Sharon had crossed a line, and everyone in the room could feel it. But she wasn't finished. The scent of controversy was intoxicating, and Sharon was a professional hunter. "Let's talk about privilege for a moment, shall we?" she continued, her voice now carrying the full weight of her decades on television. "Because I think our viewers deserve to know what kind of privilege we're dealing with here. You were born into a life that most people can't even imagine. Private jets, palaces, armed security. The best education money can buy. And yet here you are, painting yourself as the victim." Harry's fists clenched against the armrests. His breathing grew heavier. The other co-hosts sat frozen, realizing this wasn't an interview anymore. It was a demolition in progress. Even the studio audience, usually lively and reactive, had gone completely silent. "Victim?" Harry repeated, his voice cracking under the strain. "You think this is about playing the victim? This is about protecting my family from the same machine that killed my mother. It's about refusing to let history repeat itself, while people like you sit in your ivory towers and pass judgment on pain you could never understand." The mention of Princess. Diana sent a visible jolt through the room. Sharon's expression faltered, for a moment, as if she realized Harry had escalated the stakes beyond the realm of showbiz sparring, but she recovered almost instantly, eyes narrowing. "Don't you dare!" she hissed, her voice dropping to a low, dangerous whisper that cut through the silence like a blade. "Don't you dare use your mother's memory to justify betraying everything she stood for." Diana had her issues with the royals, yes, but she never abandoned her duty. She never ran off to California to make Netflix documentaries or write tell-all books for profit. Harry shot to his feet so fast his chair nearly toppled. The sudden movement rippled through the studio. Security guards tensed off camera, unsure whether they were witnessing a meltdown or a moment of pure, unscripted rage. "How dare you speak about my mother?" Harry roared, his voice booming through the studio with a raw fury that silenced every breath in the room. In that instant, it was clear. This wasn't just television anymore. It was history. Chaotic, combustible, and impossible to look away from. "You didn't know her," Harry said, his voice trembling with fury and grief. "You don't know what she went through, what she sacrificed, or what she wanted for her sons." Sharon remained perfectly still, her expression composed, almost serene despite the chaos she had unleashed. She knew exactly what she had done. She'd stripped away Harry's polished public mask and exposed the wounded man underneath. And she wasn't about to stop. "I know she wouldn't have wanted her son to become a professional victim," Sharon said coolly, her words slicing through the air with surgical precision. I know she wouldn't have wanted you to abandon your responsibilities and sell your family's private pain to the highest bidder. And I certainly know she wouldn't have wanted you to use her memory as a shield every time someone dares to question your choices. The words landed like physical blows. Harry's face contorted. Anger, disbelief, sorrow, all flickering across his features in real time. The cameras captured every second, broadcasting his unraveling to millions. It was excruciating and mesmerizing television. You're crossing a line, Sharon. One of the other hosts finally interjected, her voice trembling. Maybe we should cut to a commercial. No! Sharon snapped, not taking her eyes off Harry. I think our viewers deserve to hear the truth for once. Not the polished fairy tale your PR team has been spoon-feeding them. They deserve to know what kind of man walks away from his family, his country, and his duty because things got a little difficult. That was it. The dam broke. Difficult? Harry exploded, his voice raw and cracking. You call watching my wife be systematically destroyed by the British press difficult? You call having my newborn son's safety threatened difficult? You call being told that my mixed-race children wouldn't receive the same protection as other royal grandchildren difficult? The words hung in the air like a live wire. The studio froze. Even Sharon blinked, momentarily caught off guard by the sheer force of his outburst, by the pain behind it. But the damage was already done. She straightened, her tone turning cold and patronizing. So now we're playing the race card, she said, feigning disappointment. How predictable. When all else fails, when you can't defend your actions, you cry racism. It's the oldest trick in the victim playbook. The accusation hit Harry like a slap. His eyes widened. A mix of shock and disbelief etched across his face. The silence that followed was so absolute that even the soft hum of the studio lights felt deafening. You're unbelievable, he said finally, his voice low but vibrating with fury. Absolutely unbelievable. You sit there in your seat of privilege, having never endured an ounce of what we've faced, and you have the audacity to call our reality a playbook. Sharon leaned back, the faintest smirk on her lips. The look of someone who knew she had gotten exactly what she came for. She had drawn Harry out, forced him off script, and created a viral moment that would dominate headlines around the world. I'm stating facts, Sharon said, her voice maddeningly calm against Harry's breaking composure. The fact is you had everything, and you threw it away. The fact is, instead of working within the system to make change, you torched it and cashed in on the flames. And the fact is, you're sitting here now, trying to convince us you're a victim of circumstances most people would kill to have. Harry stood there, trembling, his chest heaving with the effort of restraint. Every muscle in his body was coiled tight, fighting the instinct to lash out, to shout, to walk off set. The cameras caught it all. The rage, the heartbreak, the flicker of humiliation that crossed his face. The prince who had spent years mastering his public image was now completely, devastatingly exposed. Harry's expression was raw, every emotion visible, every defense stripped away. But Sharon wasn't finished. She had one last card to play, one final strike that would push this confrontation past the point of no return and into territory that would echo far beyond the walls of that studio. You know what I find most disturbing about all this, Harry? She asked, her tone deceptively soft, mock concern masking the venom underneath. It's not just that you've abandoned your family and your country. It's that you've monetized your pain. You've turned your trauma into a business model. You've built an empire around your mother's death. And frankly, it's grotesque. The words hit like a thunderclap. Harry's face went white, then flushed red with fury, so palpable that several crew members visibly recoiled. The accusation was brutal, deliberate, and designed to wound. Even Sharon's co-hosts looked horrified. Stop, Harry said quietly, his voice low but dangerous. Just talking. But Sharon didn't stop. She'd made her career by going too far, by saying the unsayable. And now, with the cameras rolling and millions watching, she wasn't about to pull back. Diana's death was a tragedy that broke the world's heart. She continued, her tone growing sharper, colder. But you've turned that tragedy into your brand. Every interview, every documentary, every book deal, it all circles back to your mother's death and how it affected poor little Harry. You've made millions from her memory, and you have the nerve to lecture others about exploitation? The studio erupted into chaos. Producers shouted through earpieces. The hosts tried talking over one another. Harry's security detail edged forward, reading his body language. The clenched fists, the rigid jaw, the tremor in his voice. As warning signs. "You're sick," Harry said finally, his voice shaking with rage so intense it seemed to come from somewhere deep and primal. "You're genuinely sick to sit there and accuse me of profiting from my mother's death. A woman who died when I was 12 years old. She never got to see me grow up. She never met her grandchildren. And you stand there and call that a brand? It's inhuman." Tears streaked down his face, not of grief but of fury. The kind of tears that come when pain and anger collide, when words are no longer enough. "I'm just stating facts," Sharon replied, disturbingly calm. "Every major decision you've made since leaving the royal family, the Oprah interview, the Netflix deal, the memoir, all of it revolves around Diana. You've built a multi-million-dollar empire on her story." Harry wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. When he looked up again, something had shifted. The vulnerability was gone. What replaced it was icy, deliberate, the look of someone who had just made a choice. "You want to know about my mother?" he said, voice low and controlled, far more chilling than his earlier rage. "She spent her final years hunted, chased by photographers who cared more about a paycheck than her humanity. She died in a tunnel in Paris because people saw her as a commodity, a spectacle. Sound familiar?" He took a step closer to Sharon, forcing the cameras to readjust to keep them both in frame. His voice dropped to a near whisper, but the weight behind it filled the room. "And now I'm sitting across from someone doing the exact same thing. You're exploiting tragedy for ratings. You're feeding on pain and calling it journalism. You're part of the same machine that killed her, and you don't even realize it." For the first time, Sharon faltered. Her mask of composure cracked just slightly, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Maybe for the first time that night she understood she had gone too far, but it was already too late. It was too late for regrets, or second thoughts. "The difference," Harry said, his voice regaining power and clarity with every word, "is that when I tell my story, I'm trying to prevent others from enduring what my family went through. When you exploit it, you're just feeding the same machine that destroyed her in the first place." Sharon opened her mouth to fire back, but Harry raised a hand, a sharp, final gesture that silenced the room. "I'm done," he said, pulling off his microphone and setting it firmly on the chair. "I'm done with this conversation. I'm done with this show. And I'm done with people like you who think basic human decency is optional as long as it brings in good ratings." He turned to leave, but paused midway, glancing back at Sharon one last time. The anger was gone now, replaced by exhaustion, the kind that runs deeper than words. "You know what the real tragedy is here, Sharon?" he said quietly. "You had a chance to have a meaningful conversation, to talk about issues that actually matter, veterans' mental health, support for military families, real human stories that could have made a difference. But instead you turned it into a circus. For entertainment!" Sharon finally found her voice. "Harry, wait. No." His tone was steady, final. "I've waited long enough. I've spent my entire adult life waiting for people like you to remember that there are human beings behind the headlines. I'm done waiting." With that, Prince Harry turned and walked off the set of The View. The studio fell silent. His footsteps echoed off the polished floor as stunned crew members and co-hosts exchanged helpless looks. Sharon sat frozen at the desk, surrounded by the aftermath of a moment that would be replayed around the world within hours. She had gotten what she wanted, the viral moment, the ratings, the shock value. But as the cameras kept rolling, capturing her sitting alone at the table while her co-hosts followed Harry backstage, the victory suddenly felt hollow. For the first time in her long career, Sharon Osbourne appeared at a loss for words. She had won the battle. She'd provoked Harry into an emotional collapse that would dominate headlines for weeks. But as she stared at the empty chair across from her, it was impossible to escape the truth. Some victories cost too much. The interview was over, but the fallout had only just begun. In less than 30 minutes, Sharon Osbourne had created one of the most explosive moments in daytime television history. But she had also exposed something darker, a ruthless willingness to push past empathy, past dignity, for the sake of a headline. As the studio lights dimmed and the crew began to pack away their equipment, one thing was certain. This confrontation would be remembered, dissected, and debated for years to come. Sharon Osbourne had humiliated Prince Harry on live television, but in doing so, she had crossed a line that might haunt her for the rest of her career.